activists have gifted a British shale gas drilling company a special, if unusual, present. A 17-meter, 1.5-ton wind turbine propeller placed inconveniently across the entrance to a fracking site. More now with Helen Rimmer, who's Northwest campaigner at Friends of the Earth. Thank you so much for joining us. But these two groups, they're never going to agree. How far will stunts like this, while they may be amusing, how far will they go? Don't you need the government behind you to get anything done on fracking?
Well, I think that today's stunt this morning certainly is showing the spotlight on the alternatives to fracking and shale gas that we have in the UK. A wind turbine blade was placed across the front of the entrance to the fracking site, and we actually have some of the best wind resources in Europe, onshore and offshore. And the point of today's stunt was really to highlight that and to show that there are alternatives to shale gas, and the government doesn't need to be following this dash for gas that it is so gung-ho for here in the UK.
Now, despite Britain's active anti-fracking movements, we've seen quite a few protests, especially recently. Exploratory drilling is still going ahead. Don't you think the government's already made up its mind here? They obviously know about the options.
So we've only had a handful of exploratory drilling sites across the UK, but already we've seen huge local opposition, whether it's been in the southeast of England or the northwest where we're seeing it now. And I think with the government's new licensing round, which is going to open up another 2/3 of the country to potentially to fracking, we're going to see even more opposition. And I think the government is going to have to put a moratorium in place like it had done previously and actually listen to the concerns of communities, because there's a very loud and clear message that people do not want this in their local community, and they don't want it anywhere else. We're seeing a lot of support for renewable energy. In a recent survey, 7 times as many people wanted a wind turbine in their community than a shale gas well. So we think eventually, as more and more community opposition arises across the UK, we will see the government having to listen.
In the UK, energy bills are soaring. There are almost weekly protests about that. Aren't people going to put their finances ahead of the planet when it comes down to it?
Well, one of the main claims of the shale gas lobby has been that it is going to reduce energy bill prices, and we have seen in the US it has had an impact on prices. But here in the UK, it's a vastly different story. It will be much more expensive to extract. Even now, the Secretary of State for Energy and some of the fracking companies themselves are saying that it is highly unlikely to bring down energy bills. So I think people will start to see through that claim, because it's simply unfounded in evidence.
Green energy is very expensive, while conventional energy is polluting. Is there some kind of middle ground, a balance here, where perhaps the two sides could agree?
Yeah, the cost of renewables are coming down daily, and particularly onshore wind, that's becoming much more cost effective and cost comparative with gas. I think one of the main improvements and investments we could make right now is on energy efficiency. We have in the UK some of the worst housing stock in Western Europe for leaking heat. And so one of the main short-term improvements we could make is to make our housing stock much more energy efficient through things like insulation. And that's also very good for jobs. It's a very job-intensive activity. So we think, as well as developing renewables, we can do a huge lot more with energy efficiency as well.
Helen Rimmer, Northwest campaigner at Friends of the Earth. Thanks so much for talking to us here on RT International.